First of all, I always thought that breast cancer was a white woman's disease. I didn't know that black women got breast cancer, and that was mainly because all the promotions featured white women. So I just thought, oh, black women don't get this. And then, lo and behold, I was diagnosed with stage 3 advanced breast cancer. I thought after that, I finished with the IV and the chemo, that I was going to go home. I didn't know I had to take additional over-the-counter, not over-the-counter, but prescription drugs. And I went, and it was quite expensive. And I thought to myself, okay, what do poor people do? How do women that look like me, that is less fortunate than I am, how do they make it? How do they find the money to pay for this prescription, take care of their families, cover all their finances? That must be so difficult for them. And then I was at home one morning feeling, terrible after chemotherapy treatment. Couldn't get off the bed. It was terrible. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't want any other woman that looks like me to have to go through this alone. So when I get better, I'm going to do something about this. That started the journey of me and the Olive Branch of Hope.
Welcome to all of our visionary women, our sisters who are building deep foundations so we can build massive structures and continue to deliver good to this world. I am so pleased to be here with you tonight on day 4 of our 30 Days of HERstory. Before I bring on my guests, I extend welcome to you as well from our founder and executive director of the Olive Branch of Hope, Leela Springer, as well as members of the board, volunteers, supporters, and everyone who is receiving support from the Olive Branch of Hope. We welcome you here to this space. Before we jump in, I'm going to invite on my dear friend Alethia, and we're going to hold space to acknowledge the land. And with that land acknowledgement, we'll invite you into a moment of silence. So the Olive Branch of Hope's office is situated on Indigenous land. This is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. The Olive Branch of Hope gratefully acknowledges these Indigenous nations for their guardianship of this land. The Olive Branch of Hope also recognizes stolen people from across the world who have inhabited this land by force. Slavery prior to and including the transatlantic slave trade, continuing through modern-day human trafficking, have brought Indigenous people from across the globe to care for this land. We acknowledge the truth of our Canadian history and commit ourselves to reconciliation with knowledge and careful intention. And so, Alethia, I invite you to join us in this moment of silence. Thank you, Alethia. Thank you to all of our sisters for giving us the grace and space to hold this moment. As we set our intentions for the conversation that we're about to jump into, Alethia, welcome, my dear. How are you doing today? Oh, wait, hold on. We got you muted. There you go.
Hi. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Good night. I just want to say hi to all our viewers tonight.
Thank you. So, Alethia, I know quite a bit about you, and I am still learning about all of the cool things that you do and all the different ways that you support, and but I'd like to leave this space for you to tell everyone about yourself. Tell us what you do. Please show off.
Thank you. My name's Alethia Cadore, and I'm a therapist in Toronto. I offer remote and in-person services. And what I like to call myself is a holistic practitioner because I focus on the mind, making sure the body is well, and also your soul. And I do that through cognitive behavioral therapy, which means that we look at your thoughts and how your thoughts are affecting your emotions and your behavior. And we know that when we're not feeling our greatest, sometimes we do have a behavioral reaction to our environment. So when people come to see me, that's what we talk about, those limiting beliefs that are holding you back. We get to the root of what that trigger or emotional stress could be. We develop some coping strategies so that you're feeling better about the things that are going on and you can manage your emotions a little bit better and lead with confidence. And my population is primarily the Black Indigenous community and people of color. I do see women, but what I've noticed right now is an increase of men coming in to get support, and I appreciate that. I also do some things in my community, mentoring students, which is something that is a pleasure of mine. I won an award through my alma mater. Thank you, Toronto Metropolitan University. And I mentor students in the Tri Mentoring Program that are focused on, you know, psychology and other areas of support, and also sit on a couple of boards, Equitable Action for Change,
Yeah.
and also the Ontario Society of Registered Psychotherapists. And that's something new. Thank you. And what I do is just make sure that we have advocacy for registered psychotherapists, especially psychotherapists of color. And we also like to ensure that they have the education and the ethics that they need to thrive as a psychotherapist.
Oh, wow. There's so much there I can pull out. I think one of the biggest ones that stood out for me is the depth of work that goes into the preparation to then lead with confidence. I think in entrepreneurship, you know, there's quite a lot of fake it till you make it, right? And sometimes we try to put on confidence on top of the unmanaged trauma and stress and
Mhm.
strain, and we get into this grained culture, right?
Yeah.
And we have to show externally that we're doing it all and we're doing great and all of these things, especially with social media when that comes into play. And
Mhm.
when we're not dealing with all of the underlying things that are actually patterning our behavior and determining what level of success we may or may not realize, you know, until we deal with that, we can't genuinely lead with confidence. Um, and I think that that was one of the like the biggest pieces there in terms of the support that people can reach out to you,
Mhm.
you know, to gain. So, could you please share with our visionary women, our sisters and brothers who are watching and supporting, you know, where they can find you to get that support so that this confidence is genuinely exuding from within?
Yes, and I really want to address something that you had mentioned in terms of, people of color being in positions where we have to, put on a different persona. Sometimes we have to code switch. People have mentioned to me that they just aren't able to be their authentic selves when they are at work. And, that really concerns me because what do we do with that piece of us that is so important, which is, yourself. And sometimes when we're at certain workspaces, there might be some processes, there might be a code, there might be some ethics that you might need to adhere to. Um, and for some reason, people feel that that's void of their personality. And I want to let people know, I mean, this is a word that goes around a lot, imposter syndrome. And I think, we really need to address it because I see it more as anxiety of being in a workspace where you cannot just be your authentic self.
Wow.
And when we are imposturing or being something that we're not, I think we're just following along and just towing the line, whatever that means in our workspace. And, I am fortunate to be in workspaces where, we have to be who I am. I'm working with the public. There are going to be those personal triggers that come up, whether consciously or unconsciously. So for me, it's very important that I check myself. And this is where the self awareness comes in and the self actualization that happens over a period of time. That when we're really starting to, be in tune with ourselves and understand who we are, then, that's just a natural thing. That occurs when you are in a workspace and you're a leader. Those natural gifts come out. And I think that's what makes us so anxious in the workspace, is because we realize our true potential. And for some reason, it's being stifled. So that anxiety is just because of the constriction and the restriction that we're feeling. And yeah, we just really need to take a step back and try to understand what that means. Not everybody might say, hey, I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to be going into entrepreneurship. But there is something that's within us that what do you call it? That it's a little bit of a light, a little fire that boils within us. And that's where that anxiety comes from, because our natural self is just trying to come out, but for some reason we're suppressing it.
Yes. And, to those of us who lead in entrepreneurship,
Yes.
where we have staff or team members, to those of us who lead in nonprofit, where we have staff and team members, whether it's your board, your volunteers, there's a very important lesson there. You're talking about the construction of the culture that inculcates imposter syndrome. And so it begs us to ask the question, what culture are we actively creating so that our team members can express themselves authentically and fully, you know?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I love that. That's amazing that you have that introspection. And I'm sure you've thought about it and we've all experienced it, right? In the workplace, in terms of who we are and, how we want to lead naturally, especially for women that have that natural gift, of just stepping up and just doing what they regularly do, but then just taking it up a notch. I think in terms of that, I know we talked about this before, that vision, and just understanding, that your dreams, your goals, your aspirations, they lead you straight into, um, the manifestation of yourself and who you want to be. I mean, this is so natural that you evolve in that way. And for some people, it could be developed over a period of time where you might need to take some of those um, goals and some of those ethics that you could have acquired from different workspaces. And then you're still trying to figure out, how that fits into your own personal development and your own way of thinking. And that's why I really like the CBT in terms of really looking at those thoughts and looking at your vision and what are those barriers that are limiting you to get to that goal. And when you're able to see that vision and it's so vivid and strong in your mind, that that is something that, you know, enlightens you, and that's something that you definitely want to strive towards. So you just focus and you have that tunnel vision that directly, gets you to that goal, that outcome that you desire.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know that you talked about what works in one space not working in another, and we see that particularly with migrants,
Yeah.
because not only is it the work cultures but societal cultures, and what works in one place and what doesn't work in the next. And for people like me who've lived in multiple countries, you can't bring everything with you all the time, right? Some things, like the downtown Manhattan chop chop, let's get it done, no time for small talk kind of thing, doesn't cut it in, like the West End of Toronto, right? It's not the same feel and the same vibe. And so that ability to be authentic with the ebbs and flows and with the changes and with the growth, you talk about being able to identify our personal development in that, right, where we can track based on our goals. So let's go a little deeper into this concept on
Mhm.
vision here. We know that we need to, or at least maybe we've heard, right? We've heard that we need to set goals. We've heard that it's a good idea to write things down. And we hear this word vision. And for some people, it has very different context and very different meaning. But for you, what do you think is the importance of vision?
Well, I think I kind of explained a little bit about vision in terms of your goals, your dreams, and your aspirations, and you have a desired outcome. So whatever it is that you set your mind to achieve based on those set of you know processes that you might put in place, or some people call it their goals that they put in place. All these things should align to what that end result or that outcome is that you desire.
Mhm.
And once you set your mind to it, and you have some um, steps of how you feel you can achieve that desired outcome, then I find that that's when we start to set our mind to prepare ourselves to, um, you know, lead into that desired direction and to accomplish those steps that it takes to reach that desired outcome.
Yeah. So you see the desired outcome as the vision or the mental preparation for the steps?
Oh, okay. Well, I always see it. Well, and I guess it depends on how people want to see it. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's really cool. Because for me, when I think about the desired outcome, that's just that ultimate goal that I'm trying to reach. And the steps that I need are the process in which I need to put in place in order to reach that goal.
Mhm.
Um, I could see how people might think it in the other way. But I guess it just depends on your method of how you decide that you're going to get to that desired goal or outcome. And I guess it depends on what those details are that you have outlined in order to get to that place. Then maybe that might be your lens of where you start or how you arrive to that destination or that outcome that you're desiring.
Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
like the fact that, we can kind of peer at it at different points, at the different stages of our lives. There might be a time where the outcome isn't clear. And so we work on that part, bringing clarity to what is the desired outcome. And you
Mm-hmm.
talked before, with the CBT, about being in tune with, like, what is our body saying to us? What are our thoughts revealing to us? And so we get on the path to seek clarity on the desired outcome. And then we have to work back. Okay, so how do I actually reach this outcome, and then that's like more of the vision being clarified as we determine what the steps are. And then you also talked about, well, am I mentally prepared to actually be a part of this process,
Mm-hmm.
and actually
Yeah.
follow the steps. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's where the accountability comes in. Yeah, I think this is something that we spend a lot of time on. And I mean, if I was to set a goal, it could be a short term, maybe 2 weeks, up to a couple of months.
Mhm.
So, I mean, those details are what I'm really going to be looking at, and, probably redefining and making sure that it's taking me into the desired, outcome that I'm looking for, the goal that I'm looking for. In terms of, getting caught up in some of the details that lead us to the desired outcome, that's where I see there could be a lot of resistance. Resistance
Mhm.
because, we might have had an expectation of what we would assume or we would think it would take us to reach that goal. And then sometimes we might get disappointed or feel a little bit of a setback because we haven't reached where we would like to be. But I say that that is just something that we just need to step back and just recalibrate and just say, hey, well, look at how far I've come. That vision is still present, but you might just need to adjust some of your processes. You might need to adjust some of the methods that you're using. Maybe it's not working. Maybe you might need to seek some support if you're having that resistance and you're not sure how you can overcome that barrier. So then that might be a good time to say, hey, you know what? I've gotten as far as I can on my own, which is great, but maybe I might need to enlist some support to help me just go a little bit farther. And I think about that adage. I think it's an African proverb. You can go so far on your own,
Right.
but then, when you bring others, you can go farther. So
Yes,
I think
yes,
this
yes.
is something that we, as people that are in the workplace and we're finding that resistance, what do we do when we're feeling that? Like, is that a sign that we need to work harder? Which I think a lot of people of color do. But maybe that resistance might be that sign to say, you know what, maybe I need to take a step back, pause for a little bit, and just figure out what is that message? Where is that resistance? Where's that anxiety? Where's my low energy and low motivation coming from? And just,
Isn't that such a massive mindset paradigm shift for people of color, people of Caribbean descent, of African descent, because it's the cure to laziness is to do more, right? We don't have time for these feelings, right? We don't have time for all of this. We got to get it done, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
a big shift.
and I agree with you. And that's why I'm saying to people, especially to women, we have a lot of responsibility. And this is Women's History Month. And before I came on this call, I just had a relaxing day. It was a snow day for me, right? Just like everybody else. And I said, you know what? I could have had a whole list of things to do. I'm just making it a self care me day.
Virtual high five, Alethea did the same thing.
Oh, yes. We're so
Yeah.
aligned, my dear.
Yeah, I had the lists, the things I wanted to do, and I thought, as I started to feel the fatigue,
Hmm.
and I thought you are learning to listen. So your body is telling you pause, take the pause.
Yeah, I just grabbed some incense. I just lit incense all over my house. I watched Flow with Joe on YouTube. Check out Flow with Joe. And I had a healthy fruit and nut breakfast, and I just said a lot of positive affirmations all day about how I just needed to choose me and choose
Wow,
me
that
first, and I deserve a comforting breakfast, and I just have to love me. And it was just so refreshing. And this is what I think about, especially when you talk about women coming from the Caribbean. And I listened to Jean Augustine's story of how she came as a domestic, well, that time they called it domestic servant. Oh my gosh. And how
was a
just
step
like,
up from slave, right?
you know,
It's like we had some progression there.
well, we have to clean our house. Yeah, but other people's houses, like,
Yeah. And
hey,
how many of our family members, right, paved the way with that same path?
Yes, but this woman had a vision. She said, let
Yeah.
me just get into the country. It's not like I didn't have any knowledge, I didn't have any background, but that was secondary to how I came here. And she focused on that and she made it. And, I think about my parents that would say to me, hey, when I have a thought and it comes into my mind, whether it's negative or positive, I have to discard it. And I said, I wonder how many times they discarded their happiness or suppressed their feelings because they just had to thrive and they just had to survive. And
Absolutely.
that's, yep. And,
I
both
think
of
of
my
I think of family members
yeah,
who, would have gone through. No, did you see Jean's documentary?
steadfast. Yes,
Yes.
I want to see it again. I just haven't had time to get outside, but I definitely want to see it again.
Absolutely.
Oh my
And
god.
we see the kind of like the connection that she would have built with someone else in her situation. And we see that vision, that she had to bring herself out. And I think of so many family members in the UK, in Canada, in the US, who've gone the same route. And the differences between some of them, some of them would, really push forward and do something else for themselves,
Yeah.
and then others were focused more on the children. I'll keep doing this so the children have another path or another opportunity.
Mm,
And but either way, it was still the point of this is a key to open a door
yeah.
for something else, right?
Mm,
Whether it's for me, myself, or for my posterity.
sure.
And you hear of the many, many stories,
Yeah.
and in our current day-to-day work, in our lives, with family members, with loved ones, with teammates at work, there's all of this there's so much conversation happening right now, right? There's the big conversations that are happening with all the buzzwords, and then there are the more interpersonal conversations that are happening,
Yes.
either from your own perspective or even scenarios that you've come into contact with your clients or whatnot.
Yeah.
um have you yourself experienced this a sense of voicelessness in all of these multiple conversations? And what do people do when they feel as though their own voice has been diminished?
Oh, that's great. Yes, just getting back to what we were talking about, in terms of how we arrived as Caribbean people. I mean, if you think about the influx of Caribbean people that came after the Industrial Revolution, some of us were so educated that we were asked to come and contribute to this growing economy. And most of us were here because of labor and the fact that there was many opportunities based on the ones that you might not have had access to back home. So, I mean, I just want us to keep that in mind that we've always worked and just never heard of people actually taking a proper break unless, you had a space to go to. So, when I think about, some of the spaces that I have worked and I had frequented, I had a voice, absolutely. However, when it came to my individual needs and advocacy, there was the barrier. As long as it said, you know what, Black children, Black youth, Black families have a different level of understanding than our European counterparts, that's where the problems occurred for me. As long as I was able to assimilate and just, go along with the processes that were already put in place, then I was a great worker, right? The greatest help they've ever had. Because, I went to the same schools they went to, I did the same things they did. But anytime I wanted to talk about my individuality, there was a problem. I had a lot of questions about, what school did I go to? Where did I get this information from? And I said, it's unfortunate that Black studies and women's gender studies, the Caribbean lens and the Caribbean perspective has been drowned out and diminished. just even having literature about the way that we raise our own families. There wasn't much information when I was going to school. Luckily, I was in a diverse environment where I had Black mentors from
Mhm.
elementary school. And I think I remember, I told you about that. I've always had Black teachers, famous Black teachers too, which people are saying is rare in the city of Toronto. But I just happen to have the experience of having Black teachers throughout my education experience. And even in my long term workplace, it was Black mentors that I had straight through. And I'm not saying I didn't have the diversity of other people that were there to support me, but my Black mentors from the Caribbean, I'll never forget them. And they really shaped me to carry on the work that I'm doing today. And, even though a couple of them have passed on, I still give respect to them. And one day, hopefully I can track down their family and just let them know how important these mentors were to me. So, yeah,
Yeah. And that impact that they would have had on amplifying your voice, you
yeah,
know? Yes. Because
yeah,
as we talk about, in our Her Story tenets, we talk about everyone being born with voice. Whether or not we have the physical ability to speak, we're all born with voice.
yeah,
It is our human, you know, like ordained, God given right to speak on our behalf. However, we communicate, whether we communicate with our mouths, our voice boxes, our fingers, writing, however we communicate, we have voice. And
yes,
so, it's not even about giving voice to someone else, it's about recognizing that their voice is powerful. Their voice needs to be respected, needs to be, given space. And so our call, our clarion call as visionary women is to amplify our own voices and the voices of others, right? Because our voice matters.
uh-huh,
Um, and in one of our masterminds a couple years ago on voice,
uh-huh.
I actually played a video with from the deaf community. It was all sign language and it was silent. There was
Oh,
no voiceover. You had to read the subtitles. And I thought it was so powerful because when they watch our television with sound, they have to read the subtitles to understand. They have to pay that attention, right? Whereas we might tune it out and just kind of, halfway listen. And so they're calling us into their space and saying, no, you actually have to bring your full attention here so that you can hear me. And I thought it was so powerful. And here these teachers have given you opportunity, which from what I hear from a lot of, people who grew up in the Canadian school system, they didn't
yeah,
have those examples. They didn't have those mentors and that access to, people who looked and sounded like them and their parents and their grandparents to support them on. And I'm so happy that you had that. And now that your voice is amplified, you get to be the one to determine the narrative, right? You decide what is the version of your story. Why do you think it's important for us, especially as visionary women, that we are the ones who will determine the version of our story?
yeah. And, I just want to say that I had to create my space in
Okay.
order for me to have that moment. And I think a lot of us had that pivotal call to action during the George Floyd murder, where, people were looking at their respective workspaces and saying, are we respecting the diversity of our environment? Are we respecting those individual voices? And people started realizing that no, they weren't. And then space was created for us. So I remember submitting an article and just talking about how I grew up and how, the respect for Caribbean people, people of color, and Black people in the way that they raised their family based on their cultural ways of knowing and meaning have been lost. And I said that it's time for us to start validating. who we are as people and how we raise our children, and that we have to have literature that supports what we're doing. And we do have a developmental theorist, and he's an American, Dr. Amos Wilson, that talked about the developmental psychology of the Black child. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because our stories have been documented from time. It's just that we're living in a Canadian Eurocentric society that does not see any other literature as being good as.
Right.
And this is something that I
Meeting the
want people,
standard. Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
When in fact, if you look at attachment theory with Bowlby and Ainsworth, and I was just talking to people about this the other day, attachment theory, Ainsworth was studied at the University of Toronto. And when they went to observe strange situation and talked about secure attachment and disorganized attachment, they went to Kenya to observe African mothers and how they bond with their children. So we've always been doing it. We've always been supporting. We've always been present with our children. It's because we're living in a society right now that does not support or recognize how we bond. But they've observed us and they've written it down, but we didn't get the credit and the recommend and the recognition that we're doing this properly and we can do this well. So that's why anytime someone says to me, "Oh, well, you want to do a critical analysis of something?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to be putting it in my lens, in my social location." And, it's so interesting because I just read an assignment of my partner's, and he was talking about, human resources and their processes. And I'm like, okay, but where's the lens, the EDI lens, the diversity lens of what it's like to have to fit into those processes and those already established ethics and, standards of how things are done. And now we're looking at the EDI component of saying, you know what, not all those processes work for everybody. And, we just want to come and we want to show up and we want to do things a little bit different. We might have to disrupt that narrative because it wasn't working for everybody. And now, we're seeing those changes. Those changes are happening, but now people are questioning, what's happening now. We had so much support in the beginning, and now things are kind of tapering off. So that's why I always make sure that I'm mentoring and I'm writing in my social location and my critical lens because I need my voice to be inserted into these spaces so that people know how I'm feeling and that there can be some action. And
Mhm.
anytime I decide to analyze something, I'm putting in some recommendations. Absolutely. Um, but I'm also getting people to think and say, well, um, are you really reflective of how everyone's feeling? Is this the company culture that's being dictated to us? Or is this something as a collective that people have agreed on? Because, yeah, we love to work in those spaces, but sometimes when we get into those spaces, that's when we realize the
Yeah.
description isn't exactly what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I make sure, and I always tell people, hey, when I'm in these spaces, I have to find some way to amplify my voice and to amplify who I am. And I think that's why I'm an entrepreneur because, we have some say, I hate to use the word control, but let me say flexibility then in what we choose to be a part of and things that align with our cause and our beliefs and our sense of self. And I think that's what makes things a little bit easier. And I hear people saying this, and I'm sure I've said this to you that I like having these spaces because it's so important for us as women to be able to speak to other women and let them know that they're not alone. And, even though it's a struggle, you can do this. Um, and I think that's so important to me that I continue to amplify my voice in these spaces when I can.
Yes, yes. Because you said, if we're not the ones writing our story, then we can't expect it to be written from our lens. We have to be the ones who write our own stories. We have to be the determinants of the version of the story that's delivered to the world, because it has to come from our lens. You know,
Hmm.
I saw this really good kind of explainer video when it comes to these the terms that are being used now, equity, diversity, inclusion.
Yeah.
And it said that diversity is having different people at the table.
Yeah.
Equity is asking who is not at the table, who should be at the table. Inclusion is making sure that as many people as possible can fit at the table. Justice is saying that those who have been excluded from the table are given voice and access to the table. And
Yeah.
then decolonization asks, who built this table? Right?
Yeah.
And so that's just your same point on, looking at the processes. Do these processes even work in a multicultural society that is changing and evolving, and bringing multiple perspectives that are beautiful and worth validating all together? And so,
Mhm.
bringing that back to one, we're amplifying our own voices through our storytelling, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, how many people, and we can talk about this with remote. You had your own space now, you're feeling like you could thrive, you can do things in your own way. And then your boss is like, okay, well, we got to get back to work now. And you're like, what? I'm going back to the office after I just made myself comfortable and I have my own space and I'm feeling great. I don't have any more rush to get to work. I can just log in at 5 to 9. I could do what I need to do. And then they're like, no, we want hybrid. And people are like, no, I'm stressed. So, yeah, where's the voice there? Where was the decision from your team to say, hey, is this working? Can we come up with some different ways of doing this? That rigidity again made people feel like, what, my stress is through the roof. I've had enough. I can't do this. So, you know, yes, this is just so great that we're having the discussion because I think this is a thing that was making people so stressed and felt like they didn't have a say and they were feeling so restricted because they were at home and they realized how much energy they were expelling just to try and fit into that routine, into that process. And they just decided, you know what? No, this is working so well for me. And how many bosses and how many workplaces said, you know what? Maybe this is a good time for us to just recalibrate,
Right.
come up with a different way of doing things because we're
Clearly
getting,
we learned something, right? There were so many roles that before COVID, oh, this is definitely not a remote role,
yeah,
that turned into one and worked, right? And so what can we learn from that? And it comes back to kind of where we started these live conversations in 2019 on the Her Story platform, was centering around, what, right now, 'cause this was early days, yes, this was March 2020.
yeah,
um, and we said, look, we don't actually know what's happening right now. We have no idea what is going on out there right now, but we do know that we've lived through hard things before.
yeah.
We do know we've experienced challenges, traumatic experiences, hardship before. So what can we take from those experiences that
Yes.
we've learned and apply it to something that's brand new right now, you know? And so to be able to have us come together and say, yes, I do have a clear vision for my life and for the work that I'm called to do in this earth. And yes, I will take my power and amplify my voice and the voices of others. And yes, I will be the determinant of the version of my story that I tell. This, in our, estimation, leads us to walking in a life of victory. What do you say, Alethea? What comes to your mind? What's the imagery that flushes in your head when you hear the word victory?
I think this is why people come to me when they've gone through some serious stress and they're at a crossroad where they're like, I don't know if I want to continue. I'm just so overwhelmed. And I just say to them, let's create the space so that I can validate you, so you can feel affirmed and you can just feel heard. And I think once we're able to clear that space and people can just start thinking about what makes them whole, what makes them feel refreshed, what makes them feel replenished, what makes them feel revitalized and rejuvenated and just vibrating on that high energy. It has to be that you're able to recalibrate your vision, set your mindset, and then do what you need with support to get to that finish line, to get to those goals that you set for yourself, that outcome that you desired, that date that you said, hey, I'm going to achieve it, that date that you set to say, hey, I'm graduating from my program, or I have an assignment due and it's due on the 30th. That is your victory. It's that desire that you set for yourself that has that outcome that you desire. And I know I've said it a lot, but that's what it is. It's just focusing on that imagery. I always have like a little cup that's in my mind, like a gold trophy. And then I hear that noise, da-da! Danielle, winner. And then I'm like, okay, I'm on the right track, but I have to visualize that. And then the other day I have this one, I don't know where it came from. It's like the pot of gold. I'm like, I know I'm getting that pot of gold, right? But I needed something to affirm myself when it came to having abundance. And I'm like, okay, so what is abundant to me? And I love chocolate. And I'm like, pot of gold. I know it's supposed to be about the leprechaun, but no.
It is about whatever you need it to be about, right? It's about chocolate.
I'm like, let me get that pot of gold at the end. So was my reward to myself. As soon as I completed, that vision or that end goal that I had for myself, then I knew that I was going to celebrate with this pot of gold. And I was like, yes, because that's something that I like. So my dopamine was already up. And I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to go for because this is what I want and I want to achieve it. And then, yes, I got it at the end. Sometimes I like to take my rewards first.
I'm gonna have my gold cup and then
yeah, and then I'll do it after. But that's my goal, right? To just make sure that I get it done and I do it with excellence in the way that naturally is part of my ability. Yeah.
I love that. Ladies, go grab your pot of gold. If your pot of gold is chocolate, if your pot of gold is the Lucky Charms, like whatever your pot of gold is, go grab your pot of gold. Like determine what that is for yourself. There's something that you said in there. You said, and with support,
Yeah.
and we gloss over that, don't we? We don't really give the importance of support in the process because we're all independent women. I know I was waving my flag for a long time,
Well, I tell people about this cape, this imaginary cape that we've like, I don't know where this cape came from. It must have been that song, I'm Not Your Superwoman or something, but everybody has this cape.
Yeah.
They're like, they want to fly with, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing
At
this.
some point we recognize that the cape is a noose and we just gotta let that go.
I tell people, cut that off, burn it.
Cut it off.
Absolutely. No. I mean, yes, we choose what we can manage. And, some people are into that biblical passage where, God only gives you what you can bear. And I'm like, whoa, I think, why is my plate so full all the time? Why is my carriage or my cart overflowing?
You're like,
Right?
Lord, I think we have a very different definition of what I can bear here.
I'm like, how come my cart's full? Always. Right? So that's why I say, like, let's just step back. Okay, what is it that's really important? Let's reprioritize what that is. I tell people about this wheel of life that has our, those 5 dimensions, those 5 areas of our life, your financial, your psychological, your emotional, your physical wellness. And when you're looking at those areas, what are those areas that are causing you a lot of stress right now? Let's step back. Let's jot down, what is it? Because that's the only way you're going to get to the true realization. Because sometimes we're carrying so many bags that we don't even realize that they're heavy. And
But
they're
isn't that us though? I mean, I am the queen of all these groceries have to go in one in one shot, right?
some other food. I like to do my one-stop shop and I have everything that I need, right? But then I'm like, okay, can I do this in 2 trips? Is there a way that maybe I could order half of my groceries? Like
Oh yeah, I'm definitely on that kick.
I have to get with that because I
Yeah.
was ordering it, but I have this thing about picking out my apples, and I'm like, I need to get over that because it's about what's realistic and what's going to reduce my stress so that I can focus on the things that are important for me.
Absolutely,
What is that,
absolutely.
about our cup, has
Absolutely. And that's where the support comes in. Sometimes we need our sisters to be the ones to say, listen to me, you need to back it down a minute, you need to take a break, you need to take a moment. Why don't you didn't you start ordering your groceries? Why don't you do that again? Why don't you take a minute to go do something for yourself, sit down and enjoy your bar of chocolate, right? Sometimes it's the sisterhood, and that's what we're all about here at Her Story, is the sisterhood that encourages us and is there alongside us, not just because some people are like, oh yeah, that's great, you should do it, you go do it, right? As opposed to, oh well, how can we do it together? And then of course that accountability, as you mentioned, that you offer directly in your services at like a professional level, but for us as a group of sisters, that accountability that says, well, hey, listen, man, everybody sees what you're doing, we love what you're doing, take a minute, nobody ain't gonna get vexed just because you decide to lay down on a Saturday afternoon. Okay, like you'll be fine, the world will be fine, it's not gonna stop spinning off of its axis all of a sudden because you took a nap on a Saturday afternoon.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
And we need it. We need the rest.
Exactly. And that depth of support is what we are here for at Her Story, but also what we're here for with the Olive Branch of Hope. The Olive Branch of Hope is a nonprofit organization that has been around for over 20 years here in Canada and has been supporting women, but particularly women in the BIPOC community, particularly women of African descent, of Caribbean birth, heritage, and descent. Because we, as Alethia mentioned, we experience healthcare differently in a North American context. We experience conversations around health differently based on our culture. And so carving out this sacred space, I always let people know that inclusion is a double-edged sword. On the one side, it is including everyone. On the other side, it is holding sacred space for specialized groups, right? And so the Olive Branch of Hope is very particular in serving this group of women of African ancestry. And that's because genetically, Dr. Juliet Daniel of McMaster University, who works closely with the Olive Branch of Hope, was able to isolate the Kaiso gene. And if y'all Caribbean, y'all know that Kaiso is Calypso, so you get the point there, right? She was able to isolate the Kaiso gene that actually can show that there's a genetic predisposition to triple negative breast cancer, which is the most aggressive and least treatable form of breast cancer. You know, when I say at least treatable, I mean like macro numbers show unfavorable outcomes with this particular type, but there is so much that we can do, and that's what that support is there for, to be able to equip us to advocate on our own behalf. You know, what questions should I be asking my doctor? What do I need to know? If I had access to the olive branch of hope, if I knew about the olive branch of hope when I was going through my early time with breast cancer, I would have asked about lymphedema,
Yeah.
because I didn't know anything about lymphedema. No one prepped me before my surgery, saying that when my lymph nodes are removed from under my arm, because the disease had spread to the lymph nodes under my arm, that I would be immediately predisposed to this lifelong condition called lymphedema,
Yes.
where the fluid that naturally runs through our bodies gets trapped in the muscles, making it very painful. It can swell.
Hmm.
Sometimes it can swell to like 2, 3 times the original size, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's a lot of support that's necessary, first of all, to reduce the risk of developing lymphedema. That would have been helpful information to have had at the beginning. And then also to manage it should it develop. And we want to be able to share with everyone, because not only is it Women's Her Story Month, but it's also Lymphedema Awareness Month.
Okay.
And we are really loving that coinkydink. Right?
Yeah.
We didn't know. We won't pretend that we did it purposely. We literally did not know that those two things coincided. But it's very important for us as members of the Olive Branch of Hope, to use our platforms, like I'm here using the Her Story platform, to be able to talk more about it, make sure that people are aware of this, make sure that you understand how to support your loved ones. If you see that they're, you know, if they're complaining about heaviness, if they're complaining about tightness in the skin, if they're complaining about parts of the body feeling a little poofy, a little uncomfortable, then, you know, even if you're not the one who's dealing with it, now you're equipped with knowledge to start asking questions. Hey, have you heard about lymphedema? Right? Let's go find out more about this particular condition. Let's talk to your oncologist and see what kind of support can be given for you here. Um, and with all of our work, we are here to not only raise awareness, but to also raise funds for the Olive Branch of Hope to be able to purchase lymphedema devices. So these are specialized medical devices. So this, I'm wearing one right now. I wear it literally all day long, 24/7. As long as I'm not in the shower, this is on, you know. And this device helps to compress so that the fluid knows where to go and it doesn't get trapped in the wrong part of my arm. Now you can experience it in your arm, your back, your torso, across your chest, right? That congestion can happen in different places in the body depending on where the impact on your lymph nodes is coming from and where it's pooling. And so these devices, you know, you can get support from the government, but that takes a little bit of time for you to get your funding. You can get support through the Lymphedema Association of Ontario. There are different ways that you can get support. But as you talked about, do the processes work for everyone? There are people who are completely locked out of the processes. Maybe they're newcomers and their health card hasn't come yet. Maybe they've been here for a long time, but without status. You know, there are all sorts of different reasons why a person would be locked out of these systems. Maybe they've had bad experiences with the healthcare system, and if they don't have to ask another question, they won't. But they'd come to us as their sisters. Or maybe it's just these ridiculous gas prices and food prices that we have to deal with right now. And people are trying to figure out how to, you know, make life work with everything that is going on top of having to deal with post breast cancer treatment and maintenance with lymphedema. So go right now to www.heysisterherstory.ca and you will see there a specialized shop that we've created just for supporting the Olive Branch of Hope. Of everything we do this year in 2023, we will be financially supporting the organization. But when you go to that little shop right under the 30 days banner, you will be able to give them extra help and extra support. You can donate directly. You can buy a really cool product that we have there that has their logo on it as well. Do whatever you want, support however you want, but support. All right, that's the biggest thing. So go to www.heysisterherstory.ca. You can learn more about the organization. You can learn more about the visionary woman, Leela Springer, who, you know, got it started and has kept it running and working so closely with amazing board members and volunteers and supporters, because this is important. It's important that we hold this space. It's important that we have this level of support. As you mentioned before, Alethia, to walk into a space and it feel familiar, right? Just your presence is familiar, right? Like how impactful is that to be accepted and included before a word is spoken yet, you know?
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much, Alethia. Alethia, do you have maybe a word of encouragement that you can give to our sisters before we close off tonight? Just one thing to fill their buckets.
Yes, I just want to say to them that, you know, this is just an important month. This is a great time to recalibrate, refresh, and reinvigorate yourself. This is the best time to do it, to be gentle with your mind, to really look at your thoughts and your emotions and how it's been affecting your behavior. And if you find that you're becoming irritable, low mood, sad, and you're just feeling that resistance in your heart, please come out and see me. Please connect with nature. Please connect with yourself through writing and movement. And yeah, this is what we want. We want people to really take care of themselves. And I want women to just be gentle with themselves and be kind to themselves.
Yes, sisters. Yes, sisters, be gentle. Let's be gentle with ourselves. Let's be kind to ourselves. Let's be kind and gentle with one another. You know, those that's just too powerful. So let's sit with that for a minute. Let's think about where we're feeling that resistance. You know, where we're feeling the push or the pull. You know, and let's see how we can connect with ourselves. And I love all the points that you gave there, Alethea, because none of it required you to spend a bucket load of money, you know, for your self-care day. That's great if you can and if you want to, but we're that's not necessary added pressure, you know, for us to love and welcome ourselves and embrace ourselves and love on ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, you can do that with just a mirror, girls.
Absolutely. And you know that mirror affirmations works really well. Sitting, just looking at yourself. You might want to have some music on in the background and you're just affirming yourself and pouring love onto yourself and touching yourself and getting some luxurious creams or oils or whatever it is that you need just to pour into yourself. Yeah, pour into yourself. You deserve it.
Yeah. And I know that our friends at the Olive Branch of Hope will remind you to do that on the first of every month. My sisters, touch your tatas. We need to know what they feel like so that we know if there are any changes. Okay. But with that, we leave you, my sisters, with the admonition to let us find the best way that we can connect with ourselves here in this space and on our own, so that we can walk authentically in this life of victory, amplifying our voices, honing our vision, and determining the version of our story. My sisters, we leave you with that tonight. Have a great and fantastic night. We leave you with a voice from our MP, our Madam President, our Executive Director, Leela Springer. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Yeah.
First of all, I always thought that breast cancer was a white woman's disease. I didn't know that black women got breast cancer, and that was mainly because all the promotions featured white women. So I just thought, oh, black women don't get this. And then lo and behold, I was diagnosed with stage 3 advanced breast cancer. I thought after that, I finished with the IV and the chemo, that I was going to go home. I didn't know I had to take additional over-the-counter, not over-the-counter, but prescription drugs. And I went, and it was quite expensive. And I thought to myself, okay, what do poor people do? How do women that look like me, that is less fortunate than I am, how do they make it? How do they find the money to pay for this prescription, take care of their families, cover all their finances? That must be so difficult for them. And then I was at home one morning feeling, terrible after chemotherapy treatment. Couldn't get off the bed. It was terrible. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't want any other woman that looks like me to have to go through this alone. So when I get better, I'm going to do something about this. That started the journey of me and the Olive Branch of Hope.